to another Jungle Champion Ultimate Carry Guide, and in this one we are taking an in-depth look at the REWORK Volibear, or Valheer if you want to sound cultured. Now I did want to make this sooner, but naturally our Thor Odin bear wasn't performing up to the standards of the Aesir, and as such has received numerous changes and micro buffs, including some more in the upcoming patch. With all that in mind, we will be covering everything you need to master the bare necessities, from how to properly use his abilities, combos, runes, items, first clears, early to late game goals, and more, including of course some fancy effects and maybe a little bit of motion tracking. That being said, please do consider liking and subscribing if you enjoy the video, and please consider having a look at the new Patreon to support quality content over quantity content. And now without hesitation, let's begin. Right, let's have some motion tracking to show you the brief descriptions of each ability. I did a full 50-minute video with the designer Riot Lutzberg on my channel if you want the meat and gravy, but here you can see their core purposes and I'll dive into each one individually, and I must say it's worth noting that each of these abilities is cast instantly, with the exception of W that has a 0.25 second cast time. Yes, that means there's auto cancelling and animation cancelling, and I figure a lot of problems with volleyball players, and we'll get to this in the combo section, is they are not doing these correctly. So to begin, most of you will know that the old ultimate in Spirit has been moved to his passive. Basically, this translates to a scaling attack speed passive whereby you hit an enemy for 5 times, whether it's 5 basic attacks or throwing your abilities. Each counts for 1 stack. Once it caps at the maximum 5 stacks, it lasts for 6 seconds. You gain the maximum 25 bonus attack speed, and then you have the baby Thor kind of thunder lightning that comes out and chain reacts up to 4 enemies within vision. Now in summary, Thundering Smash is the Q. This is where you basically run up to an enemy and you smash them, as opposed to the old one where you ran up to an enemy and flipped them. The thing about the ability now is that you are much faster than old volley towards champions. You also ignore unit collision, and you are ghosted. And once you reach the enemy, you pounce, you smash them into the ground, and that stuns them for 1 second. This doesn't change at all throughout the game, it stays 1 second, and it does in fact scale with bonus attack damage, and yes, that means we will address the warrior itemization in that section also. And you may have seen on Reddit and such things that when you do have the Q, it does latch on. It's a little mini dash of about 50 units. And all that means is if you do latch onto someone, you can actually go over a wall. Although this practically won't happen too often, it's good to know at least when you're setting traps and you maybe are chasing someone down. The most important aspect to this ability is that the cooldown is reset when you become immobilized, and also acts as an auto attack reset and benefits from lifesteal, and also applies crit modifiers so you can go ahead and max Q make clickbait content. That's some juicy golem level fish. And now we move on to Frenzied Maul, and this is the main ability. People are finding this a bit contentious because you have to max it first in almost all circumstances, and your healing and damage is entirely reliant on its usage. The most important aspect of Volley's W is that it is double-sided, but in a good way, not in a coin flip bottom lane way. W1, the first time you use it, damages, applies on-hit effects, and scales with total attack damage plus HP. And this marks the target such that every subsequent W used within 8 seconds does 50% increased damage and heals him for stonks amount, translated base amount plus percentages of his missing HP. Now that's a lot of numbers for me to say at your face, but I've put the text on screen to help those who don't like things said at their face, but it means that total attack damage plus HP are absolutely huge on this bear, as well as cooldown of course, so that that second W can be up as much as possible. This ability really is your bread and butter in terms of getting damage out and then of course healing yourself as you lose HP and as the fight goes on. Volibear loves extended fighting, which makes sense. If you've ever seen a bear fight, it just likes to maul and chase down and protect its cubs and abuse Leonardo DiCaprio. Next up we have E the Sky Splitter. This is the biggest shift to his kit, and that was because it became a high cooldown, 1200 unit range AoE Thor summoning strike, except you don't get the Immigrant Song by Led Zeppelin to play at the same time. This is definitely one of the biggest high skill parts of his kit that was updated, and using this spell correctly to either shield yourself, slow enemies chasing you, to slow enemies you're chasing, or simply as part of a full damage one-shot combo is what separates the Bear Gods from the Build-A-Bears. It does take 2 seconds to proc, so we'll talk about the combined usage with Q in a second. It instantly flashes, so you must be in that AoE to get the shield, you can't walk on afterwards. And don't worry, if you hate nature and you hate bears, you will have time to counterplay this because it shows up after 1 second, so it does give you a full second to react, and yes, that really is enough time. The thing is, the cast time, it looks really cool and it takes a lot of time to do it, but you must use it in sync with your W to animation cancel, otherwise you're going to be walking around looking like you're kind of trying to sell lightning grapes or something like that. So make sure to use your E and then your Q to animation cancel it, and you can of course use your E while using your Q as well. So when you come from a gank and perhaps it's a bit too far to use your E, you don't really want to give it away too soon, you can start queuing up, you can use their E, make sure you flash to hit your Q within that radius, W chomp them down, smash an auto attack in, and down goes the Cassidon. Then there you have it, one of the basic combos. And if that really wasn't enough for you, it also grants sight. That means you can use it for scouting purposes as necessary, just like Odin's Ravens. Finally, we have the ultimate Stormbringer. Basically, this makes you go Godzilla King of the Who. That's right, the Monster King is now Altered Volibear. He's kinda gigantic, that will be shrunken down in the next patch. It lasts for 12 seconds, you leap to target within 700 range, immune to crowd control, grants vision, can go over terrain for the Big Daddy Slapdown, you're ghosted, you gain bonus HP, bonus range, and you disable towers. And yes, it extends the range of W as well, otherwise that would be kinda weird. There really isn't anything more satisfying than using it to finish off targets, however the tower disable is kinda useful when you're trying to go for the Omwrecker combo. And not only that, but you also have a sweet spot for damage which will be increased in 10.12 in the latest patch, and whose radius was also just increased to be greater than that of Mercury around the sun, such that you actually feel like a godbear descending down on the land of mortals and I suppose trolls. Most importantly, it also refreshes the Q duration cooldown. That means if you began using Q, you R, then you land, you can keep queuing, stun, maul them down, use your E as you need. Basically, that huge range and frightening levels of rage will annihilate any unpeeled Cogmores, and basically, I mean, he looks kind of unpeeled anyway. Really, that champion looks cute in the splash up, but in-game, ugh. We'll get to combos in a second, but let's just dive into what runes and builds are actually useful for maximizing Volibear's gameplay patterns, because guess what? I'm seeing some really weird stuff, and I've already played around 120 games, maybe more, of this champion from PvE and live. Now, what you're basically seeing is Conqueror, Triumph, Tenacity, Last Stand, Nimbus, perhaps Celerity, or Water Walking. That is your standard page that, you know, all the stat sites suggest. Everyone just sort of thought, hey, healing and stacks and W. Well, if you were a top lane bear, that would make sense. You're a jungle bear. We don't often get to fully stack our conk. We need amplified damage. We need something that gives us a bit of burst in those ganks as well as the 1v1s. Why aren't people running PTA? The win rate is actually slightly better. Is anyone incorrect for using Conqueror? No, not at all. You can use it to your heart's content. However, I'm really throwing PTA as my preferred rune. It synergizes better with the jungling style. It lets you get off guaranteed damage, amplifies all other damage in a situation. Secondly, if a team doesn't have a lot of tenacity, or perhaps you might find they have a lot of squishies, attack speed and coup also work just as well. Honestly, between these basically core first pages, this is all about style and preference. They both perform extremely well. The best secondary page is Nimbus and Celerity. Celerity giving bonuses to all movement speed. If you build Righteous Deadmans, you have your Q. All of this is absolutely huge on him, as well as having Smite when you want to chase someone down. Yes, we do go Stalker's Blade. However, in terms of secondary page, there is a lot of playstyle preference and a lot of pages that have good win rates that are kind of viable. My second favorite rune page is going for Conditioning into Revitalize because it gives you bonus heals and shields, and Volibear has both on his kit. If you're in high elo, then bone plating could be more useful as you try and close games out, or of course you can default to what every high elo player uses, booties and cosmic insight. Finally, most of you will note that I did a set jungle video last month on speed jungling, and you can in fact also go turbo fast Giga Bear with Phase Rush, Nimbus, Celerity, and Water Walking. And you can take the secondary page as you like. It's worth noting that the PTA pages and the Phase Rush pages have better win rates than Conqueror. Yes, sample size is a lot lower, so that kind of distorts it a bit, but it's always worth noting a nice playstyle change. Finally, I really don't like Aftershock. The loss of ECC means that the proc of Aftershock is only on your Q, and while it is almost guaranteed with the Unstoppable mechanic, it just doesn't feel as necessary. You like damage, you like utility. It's great if you're the only tank and engage, but in high elo, if that's the case, you're just looking to win ASAP anyway, so you might as well go one of the other pages. And if you're lower elo, I don't think I want to give up that much carry potential to the other people on my team. And now we get to itemization. How do our runes and our abilities channel into the best way to build him? Now this is where things get very sticky and messy like a bear and honey, because Valhyr or Volibear's build profile is so diverse. There's so many different aspects to his kit that you can focus on. However, I'm here to stop you and say if you're not building CDR and you're not building HP, you're not maximizing his kit. Remember that total attack damage, that bonus HP on his W is absolutely huge. As such, in a regular game where you are neutral or ahead, I recommend the following build. You get your Stalker's Blade and Synthhulk, you build your Triforce, you rush Swifties within that process, and then you get Kindle Gem. This gives you 30% CDR, 40% with the blue buff, which you should not be giving to your mid laner unless you're in Korea. I'm sorry guys, with the amount of mana in the game, come on, just channel your abilities a little more intelligently. And then you finish that off with a Deadman's and Spirit Visage. This gives you movement speed, this gives you gap closes, this gives you map rotations. If you need Ninja Tabi or Merc Treads in a very specific way, maybe you're a bit behind, please do go for it. But in essence, this is what we are trying to achieve. It gives you all the stats you need. It allows you to maximize the Q travel time, it allows you to maximize your auto attack resets, your passive gives you bonus movement speed and HP, It's beautiful. Now that final itemization point can be quite difficult, however I do suggest one of the following tank items as necessary versus the team comp you're facing. I do like war mugs for the extra CDR as well as the extra HP. The resistances tend to be enough because the heal you get off is enough to give you effective resistances. If for whatever reason you're really far behind, maybe you want to go for an Iceborne Gauntlet second, that is a viable option. However, if you need to go full tank, then a Wit's End as your final item can give you really good healing and damage at the end of the game. However, I must give you the build that I found that I absolutely adore. Gives me 40% CDR, gives me a huge damage power spike in the warrior item, and instead of going Phage into Triforce, which would be kind of expensive and squishy, you go into the Black Cleaver. Follow this with a Kindle Gem and all of a sudden you're at 40% CDR, you have a lot of health, and you're basically going for that huge mid-game spike. Then of course you can round it out with, normal tank items, Spirit Visage and Deadman's. Into your variants, maybe you really want a Sterex, you can try that also. But it really is designed for the players that know how to close games and use their huge leads. The other build does exactly the same thing and is better late game, however this can also be absolutely monstrous in those fights and diving backlines. Alternate choices are the Frozen Heart and Righteous Glory, I will leave that to you. However, the Cleaver itemization gives you that stickiness, gives you the HP and CDR that you need, essentially really great for all melee bruisers that can get kited decently well like Rek'Sai's and so on. Now before I anger the AP crowd and the unhit crowd with the Blood Razor, these are all fine itemizations for those builds, but they are niche, you are squishy, they don't play to all of Volibear's strength, and they're not best if you're trying to stack the 2 core stats he needs, health and cooldown. Yes, you can build everything on Volibear, that doesn't mean you have to or necessarily should. And again, no offense, but if it works one time in a normal game, it's not a viable build option. These are the best items that have the best win rates, these are the best items that suit his kit overall, and what I've personally found in my 100+ games with the champion. Yes, I really do love him that much, and that means we need to talk about combos right before we finish up with some gameplay patterns and early clears. Now basically you must know that Q and W are auto attack resets, which means you can auto attack, Q, auto attack, but when you're clearing, what you want to be doing a lot is auto attack, W auto attack. This gives you all the heals you need, the maximum DPS you need, and is absolutely fundamental to your ganks and your fights when you invade. Now on that note, we really want to surprise enemies with our slow, with our stun, with our damage. Throw out your E, cancel it with your Q, and as soon as you land it, you can W. Yes, if you know in the top lane you're going to have a longer drawn out fight, you can auto attack, W auto attack. However, if you're looking for maximum damage in a short window, you can simply do these 3 abilities, cancel them all together, keep auto attacking and chasing until your second W is up, and then finish them off. Volibear thrives on these early levels so he can bring this damage in ganks, invades, and fights. And your full damage combo, you do want to use your ultimate to sort of catch up, to disable the tower. You don't want to initiate with it because if they dash and run away, you miss that sweet spot damage. On this channel, we're all about the sweet spot damage. And so using your E, Q, W, and then R is your burst combo, so to speak. And if you're building AD, it really does hurt. Wherever you want to throw the ultimate in this situation, depending on who you're ganking, it is good to use it as long as you hit that sweet spot damage. This essentially covers all the necessary basic combos that you need on invades and ganks. Just remember to use it ultimate intelligently, and if you are going for the Omreka dives, using your E, Q, and W before you ult can really be useful, especially seeing as it gives you time to basically get a second W. The main thing we want to do though is make sure we guaranteed hit that E into our ultimate so we get the shield, the bonus HP, and the tower is disabled as well. We can absorb as much damage as possible. It really does depend on the situation here in which order you use the skills. Just remember to be animation cancelling as much as possible. And finally, we can look at early clears and what your game plan should be with all of this in mind. And at this point, probably all in your soul as well. Now, for your first clear, can Volley do a full clear? Yes. Can Volibear do a 5-cam clear? Yes. But you are not an AFK farming jungler, you are an impacting Thunder Thor bear that wants to run at people's faces and literally smash them down. As such, I really think the underrated clear on Volibear right now is simply going buff grump into an invade. This gives you everything you need to absolutely smash any jungler that doesn't see you coming or is trying to accomplish the same thing. Because Volibear is really quick on those 3 camps, provided you are auto attack resetting, animation cancelling, and of course started machete, you really should have no issue shutting the enemy jungler down and double scuttling them in most games. In other situations, I can recommend going a 4-camp clear, throwing in the wolves. Pay attention to the lanes, yes? What lane do you want to gank? Which side should you start in red or blue? And at what time should you appear in the lane in order to make your gank the most successful? Sometimes a 3-camp clear gets you to the lane too soon when your laner isn't ready and the enemy has some sort of advantage, so pay attention to that and decide appropriately. Honestly, my biggest advice here is while you can do any sort of clear you like that we've covered, these are the 2 you should really look to do and get yourself on the map. You are 100% looking to gank early and often. Ideally, like in this game the other day, I actually got a gank off in all 3 lanes and counter ganks. I was 4-0, went back to base and said, okay, GG. going warrior, and that's it. Look at the lane states. Most of you play in elos, and because that's 99% of you play below Diamond 3, where you can very easily use all 10 commandments of ganking that I covered a few weeks ago on how to use good pathing, good ganking awareness, get your combos off, and make sure you're burning flashes and repeat ganking and actually getting yourself fed. Volibear behind has the biggest problems because you really do need that Triforce, you need that damage, and if you fall behind, well, what are you gonna do? You build full tank, you like damage profile, and essentially, you know, there's so many champions that could do that, but much better. Secondly, once you level 4-5, you can easily solo a dragon. You should always be looking to get that first dragon. You should always be looking to get an 8-minute herald. You are an early mid-game powerhouse. Yes, Volibear does scale nicely into the late game with your itemization, but that's where you can be kited, that's where you will have issues. Naturally, you have less issues than before because you've got the unstoppable mechanic on your Q, so you can actually, you know, get to your targets. You can actually use R to survive a bit longer. You've got the E damage, percentage HP, as well as a shield. This is all great late game stuff for Volibear, but we're still looking to spike hard in the mid game and close the game out. And when it comes to those mid game skirmishes and dragon fights, you should always be in the lead as much as possible. That's why I stress getting on the map, getting the enemy jungler out of the game, counter jungling very quickly, and using your unique ganking angles and pressure to position appropriately, use your combos correctly, and absolutely thrive on the chaos and the slows and the CC that your kit provides. And when it does come to the late game team fights, just know which target you want to focus on. Are you a peeler with your E and your ultimate and your Q? Do you get to reset your W on a tank that's diving your team? Maybe you are the diver and you need to flank and use your R to get to the backline. Volibear really does thrive on disruption and getting in the way of the enemy team, especially when they want to kill your carries, especially when they want to do the same thing. The biggest advice I can give though is because Set basically does better Volibear things in 5v5s, is to try and make picks with your Q, use your E as a bit of a poke tool to slow and then use your Q to catch up. You can dominate 5v5 team fights, you just need to know if you're peeling, or if you're engaging, or if you're pure disruption. Ideally though, we don't have a point where we're in equal 5v5s, you do want to have a mid-game spike where you have a lead, and then you can use your picks and ultimate to basically annihilate anyone on the map. Triple kills, chain lightning, comboing the Thor smash with the Diana, whatever you need to actually clean up and win the game. Now to add on this, I will be updating my team fighting guides hopefully within the next month or two, and so that will include a lot of Volibear breakdowns and discussion on how fighters, divers, and tanks can actually navigate team fights. Keep your eyes out for that for more details on exactly what I mean from this section. But otherwise, there you have it, a long, in-depth, full guide on Volibear. I hope you were able to enjoy and learn something. Please do like, share, and comment if you did. Consider looking at the Patreon if you want to support quality over quantity. Thank you very much for watching. Please do like and subscribe if you enjoyed. My voice is tired, so I'm going to leave you with my original Volibear song that I sang on one of my first YouTube videos many moons ago. And with that, I will see you all in the next tutorial.
I slap those monsters with my paws. Slap those monsters with my paws. Monsters get slapped. Monsters get slapped. I slap those monsters with my paws.